Hi, are you learning all about CSS for beginners and want to know how CSS root variables work and how to use them in a real world project? If so, you're in the right place. CSS root variables. CSS root variables are very powerful in CSS. They allow us to control many things in one spot and everything reads from those variables. So when you come back to your code, you don't have to change too many things, just update your variables. CSS root variables are a way of setting and using CSS values. These values can be for colors, widths, heights, attributes, or anything we want in the CSS. You can set a color variable, then have the website use it everywhere. We can say our main color is aqua blue, then link everything off that in the HTML, wherever we want that color to appear. So if we change our variable, then all those colors will update, instead of changing multiple classes with different names. You can change the color variable, and all the websites will get updated at the same time. All the web pages will share a common value. We can see here the syntax is variable, then two hyphens with the name, and then the value. We'll have a look at examples of setting variables for colors, paddings, margins, widths, and heights, and more. So here we are in our example project. We can see on the left we have the examples.html, and we're going to reuse the HTML from the previous example. This one is called CSS Root Variables. We're going to reuse the HTML from our previous CSS grid example. Let's just have a quick look at it here. We can see we have the class grid example main and grid example content from the last example. On the right here on the bottom, we can see we've just copied out the grid example down to the bottom here. CTRL and plus to zoom in and negative to zoom out. And I'm just going to put the CSS onto that bottom one we can see there, CSS root variables example. So let's get started then. Let's create some CSS root variables. We go into our CSS file. And the way CSS root variables are created, you go colon, root, do it in lowercase, then open and close curly brackets. First we'll start with our main color. We'll call it color main. So the way we name our variables is two hyphens, and we'll call it color hyphen main. And let's just set this to red for now. We can see VsCode has auto-completed it there. We'll click save. So this is our first variable. So the variable as it is, we need to do something with it. We cannot just copy it straight from here and put it into our HTML to change the color of the elements. We now have to link that to whatever we want down below that. So now let's create our color main class that will read from that variable. So for a class, we use a dot. We're going to call it color main. So inside this now, we're going to set, we'll say background color. And we're going to read from the root variable we've just created called color main. So to read from the root variable, we're just going to type var for variable, and we can see VsCode is auto-completing the brackets. So if you hit enter, we now have our variable open. So what's the name of our variable? Well, it's called hyphen hyphen color main. And VsCode auto-completes the fact that we've only created one. So we just hit enter again. And we can see now that the color main class is going to read from the variable we've set. So if this works, we should be able to now put this color main class on any HTML element we want, and it'll read from this variable we've created. So let's go back to our HTML. Now let's apply the color main to, we'll have a look here, this heading content one up here on the top. We can see the grid example main, then grid example content. Let's put it into the grid example content where the H2 header is. Now we just put the color main class we created in here and click save and refresh on your browser. So we can see then here on the right, indeed the header main has been changed to red. And let's just swap that color main class now into some other element and see what happens. So let's cut it out of this element and save and refresh. And then on your browser, you might need to refresh. And we'll put it on, we'd say the footer, grid example content. Paste it in there and click save. And now we can see the footer has changed. So let's now just go in for fun and change a root variable, which color main we set to red. Let's set it to some other color. Just drag and drop, or just put type a color in, or just click on the right hand side. And once that saves, then we can see anything reading from that class is updated. We can see here on the bottom right, it's actually gone green. So that's why we call this color main, because if we call it color red, then we want to change it, we'd have to change all our class names again. How cool is that? I'll just undo it again to red. And scroll down. Now let's set up a secondary color. So we'll go back into our root variables. We're going to go to the end of the line and hit down. We're going to go hyphen color secondary. And let's just set it to any color we want. We'll say gray. And click save and refresh on our browser. Now, of course, we have the variable for color secondary set. We're going to have to link that to a class we can then apply it to whatever we want. So let's create our color secondary class. And background color, we're going to read from the variable we've just created. So again, we just type var for variable, hit enter. And we can see VsCode has given us a list of the options of the ones we've already created. So we can just go down to color secondary and hit enter. Then save. So now, anything we put this color secondary class onto, I'll just copy it. It will automatically read from the variable we set, which is gray. So let's now put that on our header. We go back to our HTML and paste in our color secondary into the class for our header. And we can see indeed the header is now gray. How cool is that? So that's root variables for colors. Now let's do another one. Let's just do a single more one. One more. We do it for section height, to set the section height of something. So let's create another CSS root variable. Double hyphen, and we call it height section. And we're going to set this to 20 EM, so that's 20 times the default standard text size we've set already in the site. So if your text size was set to 10 pixels, then 20 EM would be 200 pixels. But in standard, we set it to 16 pixels default font. So now this root variable is set to 20 EM. So whatever we put that onto in our main class and HTML, it will be made 20 EM, width or height, whatever we want. So again, let's now link that to our CSS class we can actually use in our example. So I'm going to call this class height section. So we'll say we want it on any element at all. So we'll just go height. And again, we're going to read now from the variable we've just created. So we're going to go var for variable. And VsCode once again autocompletes, and scroll down the height section and hit enter. Now anything we apply this class to, height section, will be set to that height. So if we change the variable, that will also change. So let's set one of these sections in. The header, we'll say we have a look at the header here. So we go back, we can see our gray header. We have the color secondary. Now let's set that to 20 EM high to see if anything happens. And there we go. So again, CTRL and save S, CTRL and S on your keys or else refresh on your browser window if you don't see any changes. So now, naturally, if we come back here and we change the value for our height of the section up here in the root variables, naturally, it will also change and everything linked to it. So let's change it to 10 EM and save. And we can see now our header isn't actually as tall. So this now is scaled on whatever we set in our height section. I'll just go now and put that on the footer also. So again, I already have copied it. So we go down to the footer, and beside color main, we'll paste in height section and save. And we can see now our footer and header are those heights. So one last time, let's set it to something different. Let's say that's a bit too high. I want it maybe back to 5 EM. So now we can see our header and footer updated to 5 EM. Very powerful in CSS.
Hi, I hope you found this video helpful. If so, please like, share, comment and subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos in the Web Development for Beginners playlist. See you next time.